Hey! Today we're doing an old NPR standby, a simple method to achieve a painterly looking result in Blender. Now, disclaimer, this isn't my own idea, we're merely adopting an old technique I saw way back when, most likely in an old SIGGRAPH video? I don't know, I've tried searching for it but came up with nothing. Either way, it's a simple way to achieve quite a decent result. Before we go on, the usual stuff of like, subscribe, comment, and if this helped you, you can tip me via the PayPal link in the description. Let's go. Okay, so we're going to start by removing the default small iambic icosahedron, and we're going to bring in Monke. We are going to add a subdivision surface modifier and make it 2/2, 2 in viewport, 2 in render. For what we're going to do, we're going to need geometry. We could apply this, we don't specifically have to. It's optional in this case, but we are going to need as much geometry as possible in order to make this smooth. So what we're going to do is we're going to abuse both the displacement modifier and Blender's system for motion blur. So we're going to be in Eevee. We're going to set the render samples to 1 and the viewport samples to also 1. We're going to turn on motion blur. We're going to make it end on frame, which means that the motion blur is going to take all the frames before this, and we're going to take the shutter value and make it, I don't know, let's say 20. So it's going to take the 20 frames previous to the frame that we're working on and use that. We're also going to increase the max blur to 128 pixels. This will allow the blur to move out a little bit. And we're going to set the steps to 8 for this particular example. Next up, we are going to bring in an empty. Doesn't matter which one, I'm going to use plain axes. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this empty, we're going to keyframe it here. So press I, location. Then we're going to move forward to, it doesn't matter, say 60 frames. And we're going to move it all the way out here, or perhaps even further. And we're going to keyframe it, its location right here. So this empty is going to move as the timeline goes on. We're also going to take these and change the interpolation mode to be linear, so it doesn't speed up or slow down at the beginning. Now, with this empty in place, I'm going to go back to Suzanne, and we're going to add a displace modifier. So, with this, we're going to add a new texture. I'm going to call it clouds. We're going to open this up, change this to a clouds texture, Blender original, size of 1, everything else stays the same. Now, this is a bit strong for our purposes. The model is a little bit screwed up. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the values for the strength to be 0.2, makes it a little more normal. We're going to leave the mid-level as it is, and we're going to set the coordinates to object and select our empty. So what happens now is when we move the timeline, our model displaces. Cool. That's what we want. So, let's give this model a quick little bit of shading, just so it looks prettier. Let's go to the shader editor, create a new material, call it Monke. Since we are in Eevee, you can use the shader to RGB node, and you can bring in a color ramp, set it to constant, add a couple more. Let's say 5 of them. We're going to set this one to be some nice dark shade of red. We're going to set the next one to be some shade of orange. This third one, a lighter shade of orange. Perhaps a little bit lighter than that. An even lighter shade of orange going into yellow. And one more. Nice, bright shade of orange. There we go. We're going to change into rendered mode. We're going to change the shading to smooth and adjust this a little bit. Let's move the light source here. That'll do. That looks nice. Okay, let's keep adjusting it. Like so. Like so. Like so. And like so. Okay. Now let's take our camera, position it properly, and go back to our timeline. Okay, let's set this to, say, 40 frames. And let's have a look at our result. Nice. Okay, so how do we improve on this? How do we make it look pretty? First things first, let's turn our transparent film on, render it out. Very nice. Let's go to Compositing. Check on Use Nodes, and let's add a viewer node so we know what we're looking at. There we go. Let's bring in a texture node. I have already prepared a canvas texture here. Let's have a look. It's a bit light for my taste, so a little bit of color balance. We'll fix that. I think turning the gamma down is enough. Yeah, it's more than enough. Okay, so we could just bring in an alpha over node and quite simply do this. But it's not quite there. If we zoom in, we'll see that the canvas texture is not exactly coming through. It's just an alpha over, so it's not coming through onto the actual render. So what we can do to fix this is bring in an overlay, bring in a mix node, set that to overlay, and use the output of our color balance here as one input, our render as another input, and now the texture is nice and poking through. So the output of our overlay is what we're going to use as the other input for our alpha over. There we go. And with that, we can just show it into the viewer. That looks very nice to me. So let's take our composite output, plug it in, and smash F12.